Of the Board of Selectmen. First, a brief, somewhat personal announcement. I know there's been a lot of speculation about this, and I express some doubts, but I have decided to run for re-election. So, just to put the word out there, and all the people that were waiting to leap into my seat can think about it again.
Think twice.
Anyway, I'm going to just start with Mr. Kleckner to tell us about the snow emergency coming up.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, we're expecting another midweek storm. This time it will be pretty intense in the morning hours, and as a result of that, the Department of Public Works has announced a parking ban tomorrow that begins at 6 a.m. and will continue indefinitely. There was a automatic call that placed to the residents of Brookline this afternoon. And also I want to mention that because of the intense snow, we will not be picking up trash tomorrow, and trash will be delayed a day as if it was a holiday tomorrow.
Yeah, but I think on the call I heard, because I'm a Thursday trash person, so I was listening carefully to this. Thursday and Friday are still going to be as usual, so it's not.
I appreciate that.
Exactly.
Yes, so we're going to double up. So it's really only the Wednesday day that will be delayed a day. Thank you for that clarification. So everybody should stay safe tomorrow.
Okay. Selectman Goldstein, is there a chocolate extravaganza coming up that you want to tell?
Oh, there is a chocolate extravaganza, but I didn't know I was talking about it.
Well, I thought you might want to.
Why don't you come back to me and let me make sure I get the details right before I start talking.
Okay. Selectman Waschinsky, any announcements? All right. Mr. Flaherty. Yeah.
I don't need the microphone, so.
Well, I'm
I
sorry,
think
but because
you
it's
probably-
televised and people are listening, you really have to, you can maybe come around in front and
Okay.
pull it over or something
Will do.
soon.
Will do. Thanks. Thank you, folks. I'm here tonight to obtain a liquor license for the Midwinter Mingle, which is being held at the library this Sunday night. And although I know several of you have already booked your tickets, I brought invitations, so I'll come over here
Great.
and give you all
Well,
an invitation.
And I think we should say, in case anyone's confused by the term mingle, that this is actually the big fundraiser for the Brookline Public Library.
That's correct.
And
Formerly known as the Winter Gala. This is an event that we've held for 15 years. And I think one of the board members asked me about this at another time I was before the board, why it didn't happen last year. And the truth is that an event like this takes a tremendous amount of effort to put together. We rely on volunteers, and many of the people who had worked on this event had worked on it for many, many years. And they needed a break, and they also needed to think about the best way to plan the event for future years. So the group took a breath and realized they had many, many comments from the public that they had missed the event. So the event is back, renamed the Midwinter Mingle, and it's cocktails, hors d'oeuvres, and many of your friends from Brookline who will be present. So I hope that many of you and many of our listeners tonight can find a way to be there.
yeah, well, I ordered my tickets, and I missed it last year, so I'm really glad you're doing it again. It's one of the highlights, I think, of the Brookline social calendar.
People have told me, I remember the first event, and many people came up to me for many months later saying that they'd lived in Brookline for 15, 20 years, and they had seen people at this event that they hadn't seen for a very, very long time. So hopefully some of the listeners out there, there's still time to get tickets. They can do it online by going to the library website, brooklinelibrary.org, or they can come into any of the branches up until Friday and purchase a ticket. And if they still haven't gotten and they change their mind over the weekend, they can also buy tickets at the door.
Oh, okay, because sometimes, I know in past years, you've gotten sold out, haven't you?
Many years ago, we might have. That hasn't been a problem the last couple of years.
Okay,
So-
so, great. So this is the 9th of February from 7 to 10,
Correct.
right? Comments? Selectman Waschinsky?
Well, I have my ticket, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I wasn't intending to try to put anybody on the spot here tonight. I just wanted an opportunity to mention the event before you.
Selectman Goldstein?
I'm sorry, I'm
We're
still
gonna
working.
see you there?
Yes, you'll see me there, but I'm
Okay.
also working on the chocolate extravaganza
Okay,
details
okay.
for you
Yeah.
too, so.
Okay, all right.
So-
Well, so this is, Sunday is the 9th.
Sunday night, and we're a little anxious about the weather on Sunday, but we're monitoring that very closely, and hopefully there won't be any need to think about rescheduling.
So how do people find out if you do reschedule?
That's an outstanding question. We will do our very best to publicize it far and wide. More than likely, if that decision is made, we
On the
would make
town's
it
website?
far enough in advance that we would call or contact, do everything we could to contact each and every attendee to let them know that the event was postponed.
Okay, great.
So,
All right, well, item G on our miscellaneous calendar is the temporary all kinds alcoholic beverage license for this fundraiser, Sunday night at the library, 7 to 10 p.m., the main library right next door to us. So I'll move favorable action on that. All in favor, Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye.
thank you very much,
And,
folks.
but before you leave us, I want to say how much I have enjoyed your tenure here in Brookline. I think you've done a wonderful job. I was very sorry to hear that you're planning to retire.
Talk about being put on the spot. I have had 21 wonderful years here. I have loved my job, I still do. I'll miss it a great deal, but it's time that someone else took over and carried the library forward. I'm very, very proud of what's been accomplished here, but there's more to do, and I have more to do. So my
Are you
wife's
going to
been-
run the marathon again this year?
well, if my left knee cooperates, I'd love to do that. I had a torn meniscus about a year ago, and that's not on my agenda for this year. But I am looking, my wife's been retired 2.5 years, and I'm looking forward to having a little bit more freedom in terms of travel and whatnot. So, again, I'm very proud of this institution, and I'm very confident that the board has laid out a process for finding my replacement, and I'm confident that they're going to find a very good person.
Great. Well, you will be with us a few more months until
Absolutely.
the end of the fiscal year and end of June.
Absolutely.
And we will see you again on the budget. But
Yeah.
I just haven't heard the news recently, and I wanted to tell you.
We'll have another chance to
Yeah.
properly
sure that-
sing your praises.
Yeah.
Well, or take a pound of flesh, one way or the other, right? Anyway, thank you all very
Congratulations.
much.
Thank you.
I can talk about the
All right.
chocolate extravaganza
Go
now.
ahead.
So Brookline Rotary, which I am a proud member of, is conducting its, let's see, I think this is the 5th annual chocolate extravaganza. This Sunday, February 9th, it begins at noon. It's at Pine Manor College in the beautiful, beautiful facility there. It's the old ballroom from the old estate there. And the chocolate extravaganza, as the name implies, involves a great deal of chocolate, so much so that it's an extravaganza of chocolate and other delicacies. Over 30 restaurants and bakeries and purveyors of sweets in and around Brookline volunteer their goods and their efforts, and they come in and put out just an incredible feast of great tasting stuff. And it is a $15 per person for adults tickets, so $10 for seniors and children. Tickets are available through the Eventbrite program. I know a lot of people are familiar with that, so go to eventbrite.com, plug in Brookline Chocolate Rotary Extravaganza, Get your tickets. It is a great, great time. There's all kinds of stuff there besides chocolate, too. There's other good things to eat, and also a lot of activities, and a good time to get together with your neighbors and friends and celebrate some of the delicacies and confections of Brookline.
Yeah, it is a great event. It's going to be a challenge for me this year. I have my ticket already, but I have been sticking to my New Year's resolution diet assiduously now, and this is going to be a tough occasion for me to be there, because there usually is a wonderful array of all kinds of chocolate things at this event.
It is a good time.
And I will say Pine Manor has, there's plenty of parking there, so you can park nearby, which is great. And the other thing is, this is a major fundraiser for the Rotary, and the Rotary does a lot of good. Maybe you can just tell us a couple of the things
well-
you guys contribute to. 'cause-
Well, most of the proceeds from this event go to the Brookline Food Pantry. That's the Brookline Rotary's primary category, especially when we're dealing with a food-related event like this. It's extremely appropriate. Hunger is as it is throughout the world, is a problem in Brookline, too. And our emergency food pantry does an incredible job and provides incredible service to families in Brookline who have trouble making the budget meet so that they stay properly fed. So that's the primary recipient, but Brookline Rotary does a lot of great work in a lot of different causes, both in Brookline, through the state, through the country, and around the world. Part of Brookline Rotary's net proceeds go to Rotary International and do things like build water and sanitary systems in third world nations, fight polio throughout the world, and like I said, our efforts go in just about every level of human existence, and I'm proud to be a member of it.
Thank you. Any comments?
I was there last year and was blown away by the chocolate.
Yeah.
I'm a chocolate fiend.
Me too, me too. That's why, as I say, this will be a tough day for me, but we'll see how well I do. Okay, did anyone else have any updates on their committee work?
I met with the Bicycle Advisory Committee last night, talking about Hubway and trying to get some ideas and about possible expansion of Hubway, and got some good ideas from them. So we're going to be taking a good hard look at the numbers and the new contract, see if we can expand it.
And I'll just mention that tomorrow's morning's scheduled meeting of the Brookline Place Study Committee has been postponed as a result of the storm.
Okay. Well, my diversity committee is moving along. It's got a drafting subcommittee, so in spite of what Mr. Rosenthal said to us a few weeks ago, some of us are going to try to make it for this upcoming town meeting.
That's
So
great.
we're working hard. This is for the Human Relations Commission bylaw redraft. Okay.
That's good to hear.
So I get the first item on our agenda is the minutes of January 28th. Any additions or corrections?
I do have a small correction.
Okay, anything else?
Okay, that's-
All right, I'll move favorable action then, and the minutes as amended. All in favor, Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. And I should have made this announcement earlier. I did talk to Selectman Benka today, and he is recovering satisfactorily from his surgery, and I think hopes to participate, I don't know, in person or remotely, but hopes to participate at the next Selectmen's meeting.
Great.
All right, next item on our agenda is a final grant application with the Mass Historical Commission for a matching $15,000 grant to update the town's architectural inventory forms. Ms. Hardwick.
Yes, good evening, Board of Selectmen. This is another one in the series of, over the last 15 or 20 years, that we've gotten grants from the Massachusetts Historical Commission. And being a local certified government, we sort of are in that category that they usually, if there's money, we usually get it. And we took a look, we've been trying to sort of update and upgrade all the information we've been accumulating, and we're starting to want to roll out this spring and this summer, which is connected with this, is sort of a National Register maps and information on the website to really try to do a whole sort of reboot, and it's nicely going to be correspond with the sort of revamping of our website. And in thinking about that, we looked at some of it's been the first National Register district that was nominated was 1971. It was the Olmsted Park. The next one was 1977, and it was Pill Hill, which I believe was my graduate student project. Who knew? And so we know a lot more now than we knew then, and some of the cottage farm survey forms are sort of still, some have pencil scratches from the 1980s. So we thought it was time to sort of look at the area forms, look at the individual forms, and to see if we needed to expand the multiple resource nomination that we did in 1935 when we nominated 10 districts and over 80 properties. So we've come up with 4 or 5 of the old survey inventory areas to do, as well as perhaps looking and inventorying other areas in North Brookline. We've decided, because we did a comprehensive survey a couple of years ago of South Brookline, and including perhaps Toxteth and Brook Street and Bowker Street. They're sort of becoming, we have information, but they aren't really well done. And perhaps Beale Street and Naples Street. And Beale Street seemed to be very appropriate since this is the 50th anniversary of JFK's inauguration now. And so, as always, they're matching grants, and as we've done the last couple of years, we use our time, Gina and I's time, as in kind. And so it's also the administration. It's sometimes we do our National Register program. I'm working in that, to putting it on the web to be part of the grant, and then our administration and sometimes research. So that's hopefully that we're starting to continue to upgrade and make things eligible for the good or the bad, to make things eligible for the National Register, which can, we can put things on the register and help with money, sometimes funding and other things.
All right, questions?
I do not.
I actually, just a comment, I was happy to hear you say this makes things eligible for the National Register, because I have heard from some of the very streets that you mentioned some concerns about the tear downs, and I noticed you mentioned it seems like a little acceleration in the tear down applications here. And I think there are a lot of neighborhoods that are looking for some help, some protection from.
I think so. They've been talking to quite a lot of them from in my hat as a the neighborhood conservation district personnel. But I think some of these, this is sort of the preamble or preliminary to making things eligible, and with our demolition delay bylaw, if they're eligible or listed on the National Register, we have 18 months, which often gives people a little more time to regroup, and sometimes will perhaps hinder the sort of the rapid or the intensified demolition, or, as in the case on Toxteth, unfortunate additions.
Yeah.
And so we're starting to look at that and look at things that have been sort of, they're also, the National Register it's within 50 years, so a lot of these things are now coming due, and sort of re-looking. And we know, again, a lot more than we did 20 years ago. So.
We'll keep up the good work.
Well,
I'll
thank
move
you. It's always a pleasure.
Favorable action on this question of approving and executing the final grant application with the Mass Historical Commission for a matching $15,000 grant. All in favor? Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye.
And it's always a pleasure to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aye, Greer.
Okay, now we have a question of accepting $32,750 from Children's Hospital to fund a peer review of the Brookline Place development. Mr. Dida.
Good evening. This is funds from Children's Hospital to fund a peer review from the town's consultants. A scope of work and a associated fee was forwarded to the Children's Hospital representative, and they reviewed it and approved both the scope and the fee, and subsequently forwarded a check to the town in the amount of $32,750. So this is to have the board accept this money, which will then be turned into a purchase order, and we'll get going on this.
Okay. Do you, either of you gentlemen who are working on this project want to comment on this?
Sure. Children's has approached the town, asking us if we'd reconsider some of the zoning around the Brookline Place parcel. And as part of that, what this is going to be doing is examining some of the parking assumptions, because the biggest change between what was proposed maybe 8-9 years ago and what's being proposed now is above-ground parking versus below-ground parking. So,
But it's more parking as well, right?
No,
Okay.
not necessarily.
Okay.
So the less parking there is, the smaller the structure above ground would be. So this is part of that process. So they made a proposal. They're proposing a certain amount of parking, and then we're hiring somebody to look at that and see if there's room for pushback, making it smaller. And this is going to be coming hopefully before the spring town meeting. So there's going to be a lot of discussion between now and then, and a lot of public process.
Yeah.
And
Does this consultant look at all, I know there was a lot of discussion the last time around about how this was a smart growth site because it was right there by public transportation. Does this consultant consider that in
Yes.
their analysis?
Yeah, very much. Both the MBTA, the Green Line, those are all factored into what they call the mode share, like how many will be driving, how would take public transportation, et cetera. So it does factor very much into it.
another piece of this is the Selectmen appointed a advisory team, and the consultant was actually suggested by some of the advisory team members. So
Okay.
so this is a very pro public transit consultant.
Okay, great. Anything else? No?
Nothing further.
All right, I'll move favorable action then on the question of accepting the $32,750 from Children's Hospital. All in favor, Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Didon. Now we have a contract with Beta Engineering for peer review services in connection with the Hancock Village 40B project.
Yes, thank you,
Ms.
Allison.
Steinfeld.
Allison
Okay.
Steinfeld, Planning Director. You actually have before you 2 contracts tonight, which will enable the town to hire 2 consultants to help facilitate and review the comprehensive permit submitted by Chestnut Hill Realty to redevelop Hancock Village.
Okay,
Specifically, Beta is in the amount of $24,800, and to undertake strictly peer review of both the stormwater and the traffic engineering studies prepared by the applicant's consultants. This will be consistent with all peer review, paid for by the developer, but the contract is with the town, and Beta is responsible to the town.
okay. Well, I think there's, both of those issues I know have been, the traffic and the stormwater management have been frequently raised by neighbors of this project, so this is very important work. And I assume you will be supervising as we go along?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the second contract?
The second contract is to hire a consultant to help in the administration and facilitating the overall project. The Board of Selectmen has graciously offered to help fund this individual, and it will be of tremendous assistance to the Planning Department, Building Department, and Town Council's office. Some of the responsibilities will include facilitating meetings, and that means the public hearings being conducted by the ZBA as well as the staff work sessions, administering contracts, and there'll be several, making sure that all of the information is provided on the web in a timely, meaning immediate manner. We want to ensure that this process is totally transparent. There'll be administrative details, for example, making sure that all of our files are up to date. And most important is to ensure that the ZBA process, actually the comprehensive permit process, is followed to the letter of the law. Any mistake could result in what is called constructive approval, and obviously we can't tolerate that. So fortunately, we will be hiring Maria Morelli. Some of you may remember her. She worked for the planning department for a short period of time, and she was instrumental in helping the town draft its response to mass development as part of the site eligibility. And I can personally attest that we're very lucky to have her, and I'm very pleased that she'll be providing consulting through the duration of the comprehensive permit process.
Okay, great. Questions?
Quick
Yes.
question. Thank you, Allison. Would you just speak for a moment about Beta Group and their qualifications and how they came to the process?
In terms of how they came to the process, I undertook, in consultation with the purchasing agent, a procurement process. We're not sure that it was even necessary, given that the process is probably exempt, but we didn't want to take any chances. We reviewed Beta's proposal. Obviously, the town has hired Beta in the past for peer review and any other number of projects. Beta is actually under contract to the town on another project on a retainer. I personally had experience with Beta in Framingham. They're a solid firm, a very extensive firm. They have a great deal of engineering expertise, not just in stormwater and traffic, but in
Can you point to another project they've done for us that people might relate to, something that we've been
Well, obviously,
happy
you
with?
just hired them to do peer review for Brookline Place. Quite honestly, you'd have to.
They've done a lot of work for us.
I know they have, but I want people to feel.
Still here, he could probably
Yeah,
provide.
Peter,
Still
we're
new.
inquiring about the experience that Beta Engineering has with the town, and if you could identify some other projects that they are familiar with or work for the town.
Sure. In the transportation side, they've been our on-call consultant for several years, and so we're going back. They're reviewing the Cleveland Circle project for us. Outside of the transportation field is, they also are the design engineer on the sewer separation project on Lower Beacon Street. They do a lot of stormwater and wastewater work for us also. So they've been around, and they've been pretty good.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. I'm going to move favorable action then on the approving and executing a contract with Beta Engineering for peer review services in connection with the Hancock Village 40B project. This one doesn't have a dollar amount attached to it because we're not paying the bill, right?
Right, it will not exceed $24,800.
Okay. And the second one is a contract for approving and executing a contract with Maria Morelli in the amount of $20,000, which is coming from town funds, for consulting services in connection with the Hancock Village Chapter 40B project. Does anyone have any objection to voting the two together?
I do not.
Okay, I'll move favorable action on both then. Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have another contract for on-call stormwater consultant services in the amount of $50,000 with Brown and Caldwell of Andover, Mass. Mr. Ditto.
Back in 2003, the EPA issued a NIPDES permit. Now, I'm sure you all know what a NIPDES permit is, I trust. Okay,
We were
Now,
just talking about
why don't
them
you
a
refresh
few
our
minutes ago,
memory?
yeah.
sure. Okay, and NIPDES stands for National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. So it's basically EPA's way of saying, we got to start cleaning up our rivers and streams. Again, in 2003, they issued this to all the cities and towns in Massachusetts. And the reason it's a Phase 2 permit is that several years prior to 2003, they issued a Phase 1 permit to the large cities, i.e. Boston and Springfield. And that was a predecessor to the Phase 2, which was issued to the smaller cities and towns. So we knew it was coming, and we had a good idea what was involved. At that time, it was estimated it would be a 5-year permit, and they would evaluate how successful that was and then issue a new one. 5 years came, and they weren't ready to issue a new permit, but they effectively said, you'll operate under the permit you have until we get back to you. So they haven't gotten back to us yet, so we are still working on that 2003 permit. However, from public meetings we have attended, it looks like this new permit's going to be a lot stricter and more rigorous. They're also changing their methodology as to how they expect to clean up, the rivers, instead of doing it by a town-by-town basis and saying, Brookline, you discharge into the Muddy River and the Charles River, and saying to a community out in the Worcester that you discharge into whatever river is out there. They said we should be really looking at this in a drainage basin method rather than a city and town operating independently. For instance, the lower Charles River has certain pollution problems that are unique to that area as opposed to in the Neponset River. So they're kind of streamlining this permit to drainage basis, saying what are the issues in the drainage basins and how do we clean them up? So that being said, we were looking at some of the things that we may have to do down the road in this new permit. And make no mistake, we do a good job under the permit we have now. We have very few complaints from EPA. We haven't had any complaints from EPA. So we're very comfortable with what we have, but what we see coming down the road kind of makes us a little bit nervous that either we won't have the expertise to respond to some of these issues or we don't have the time. That being said, we sent out an RFQ to several consultants that are what we feel are experts in the field of stormwater management. We evaluated the RFQs with Commissioner Papasturgeon taking charge, Fred Russell being on the committee, and myself. After reviewing and grading the RFQs, we unanimously chose Brown and Caldwell. They've been around for quite a while. They are very proficient in stormwater management, particularly with NIPD's permit. So this contract is an on-call contract, and we may use them, we may not use them, but we want to have the ability to assign them tasks as they come in from EPA.
So this, if we vote this favorably, that would give you authorization up to $50,000, but you would only pay as you called upon them for services.
Exactly. This is a task-oriented contract. In other words, we get something we feel not comfortable with it, we sit down, have them draft a scope of work with a fee, negotiate that, and then sign the contract.
Okay. Did you have anything to add, Mr. Russell?
If I could, thank you. If you look at the scope, they actually do target 4 areas that they want to help us with. One of them being, as Peter mentions, that with the new Phase 2 permit coming out, more stringent regulations, well, it's going to cost a lot more money to the town. So they're also going to look at different mechanisms of how we can maybe fund those additional requirements as well. So that's sort of the main piece of this, is different funding alternatives that may come up in order to satisfy the new permit.
Questions? Selectman
So
Goldstein.
are we going to need a consultant on call for this in perpetuity, or is this just to get us through this initial permitting?
I think this will get us through well, first of all, back up a little bit now. Again, the whole funding issue, the permit hasn't not been issued yet. It hasn't been issued. It was issued in New Hampshire. What we're hearing is that they're going to mirror that, the conditions of that permit for Massachusetts as well. Again, more stringent regulations. The funding piece really, I wouldn't say in perpetuity, but I would say probably over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, we will be seeking their services additionally over and above this first contract. That's that, if I had to guess, or if I had to project that.
Can you also project whether $50,000 will get us through 2 or 3 years of these services?
I
or
tend to doubt that,
You think you'll be back for further authorization
Yes.
at some point?
yes.
Interesting.
Selectman Russo. I have a couple questions. One, I thought we'd been doing all this, separating the sewer and stormwater and whatever, so I would have thought we were in really good shape
Yeah, yeah.
at this time.
I had the same reaction. so,
Yeah.
Yeah, don't get confused. That was, the Lower Beacon Street project was a sewer separation project, funded, just separating the sewage, not necessarily cleaning up stormwater. So, we have been very successful in finding what we have, illicit connections, i.e. that's a sanitary connection that's tied into the storm drain instead of the sanitary sewer. And that, in my mind, is the number one pollutant that we want to address. So, we've been very successful in our program to date, as I said before. And as Fred said, there's going to be some challenging things coming down the road under this new permit. So that's where we stand.
So are we going to be faced with having to treat our storm water?
The first cut is what they call best management practices, and that's good housekeeping, if you will. It's cleaning the streets as soon as we can after the snow's gone, getting the sand out and salt out, cleaning our catch basins and make sure that, they're not plugged and not operating correctly. And probably one of the things you all realized that we did was the stormwater bylaw that town meeting accepted. And that basically says, okay, if you're coming in to build a house here, this is how you're going to manage your construction to assure that there's no runoff coming off your site and into our catch basins. Also looking at the possibilities of recharging groundwater instead of putting it directly into a drainage system. So these are the things we've been doing over the last 8 years, and it's made a difference as we sample outlets. I think there's 40 places that we sample the stormwater quarterly, and you can see a progression over the last 8 years of how the water has been getting cleaner.
I'm a little concerned, though, when you say they're going to be looking at things based on zones. Are we going to be held responsible if our neighbors are not doing as good a job because we're discharging into the same area?
No, because we're going to sample our discharges into the Charles River, Muddy River, whatever, and also we're going to sample it into municipal connections to make sure that our water's clean. And if water's coming in that's dirty, we know about it.
Okay. Great. Any further questions?
Well, and just a comment, it just seems like we've done everything that's been asked of us. The sewer separation, lots of money spent on that. I know there's, other than town money is spent on it, but lots of money, lots of effort. Now the Muddy River cleanup is going, and now that we're finally there, it seems like they're going to raise the bar higher and add more expense, more effort, and when does it end? But given that this is an on-call contract and there's no immediate expense to us, I will support it.
All right. I'm going to move favorable action then on the contract for on-call stormwater consultant services in the amount of $50,000 with Brown and Caldwell. All in favor, Selectman Goldstein.
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky.
Aye.
And I'll vote aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move to the main calendar, and Chief O'Leary. Did you want to comment, Mr. Collector?
I'm helping him with the
technical aspects of the okay.
presentation.
Well, good evening, and
You have skills that we didn't know about.
thanks for giving us the opportunity to come in front of you tonight, just to tell you a little bit about our efforts last year and the outcomes of a lot of things that the police department did last year. That I'm just going to hold off on for a little bit. I just want to make a couple of general comments. And tonight, we're going to talk about the crime rate. And I think one of the big things I want to point out to is we did a lot of effort, a lot of outreach through town, and we asked our officers to do a lot. And this past year, we saw a 12% reduction in crime from 2012. In the past 20 years, from 1994 till today, we have a reduction of 61% of Part A crimes, which is phenomenal when you come to think about a community of our size, where we're situated, what we're up against. And it's really a tribute to a lot of things. You can't put your finger on one thing and say that that's the reason why crime is down. There's a lot of factors go into it. But I do want to touch base on a couple of them. And one of them is that the residents that we serve and the people that come and visit in town do cooperate with us immensely. They're not afraid to call when they see something suspicious. They're not afraid to give us a description when they see somebody doing something wrong. And we respond in a real quick and timely manner, and we follow up on things. I don't think every community really has a citizenry that's willing to step up to the plate when they're asked to go for a ride in a police car to make an identification of a subject that had done something to somebody else on the street that they don't even know. But we don't run into problems like that. We have people that really want to cooperate. Our officers do a good job making them feel at ease, and the results are in a reduction of 12%, or 61% over the last 20 years. But also, a lot of credit has to go to our officers. I say it each time that I get the opportunity to come up here in front of you to talk about the quality of work that our officers do day in and day out. And last year was absolutely no difference. We were challenged a lot of times last year. We had a lot of bad things go on, not only in Brookline, but also surrounding areas, especially during the marathon. And we saw our officers take it up to another level, especially the day and the week following the marathon. But on a regular basis, our officers these last few years have been asked, especially to change the way they do things. We try to be smarter the way we assign people. We try to use a lot more intelligence, a lot more analysis when crime's taking place. And we expect our officers to pick up on things right away. We feel that one way to get a safer community is to make sure that action is taken to stop crime from taking place. If that does not succeed the first time, you want to make sure it doesn't happen a second time. And that means staying on top of things. That means reading the reports as they come in. That means familiarizing yourself with what's taking place when you're off duty. We've charged our supervisors, our sergeants, lieutenants, and captains with more responsibility over the last several years. It used to be that we would, as a command staff, see a crime pattern happening and then ask people what's going on or what are you going to do about it. Well, we're at a point where our officers will see crime developing, a pattern developing, and they will put something in a program, computer program that we have called the STARS program. They'll recognize that it's a problem, and the supervisors will put in there their thoughts on how we can best solve the problem. And then our officers, when they get in their cars before they start the shift, they check that program. Just like tonight it got checked, where we heard officers calling off down around Amory Street and Thatcher Street because of something that took place there on Sunday night, attempted robbery that took place there on Sunday night. So I feel we're at a pretty good point, and it's a credit to a lot of effort on the part of the people that work for us, and it's a credit for what they do. Some of the changes that we've had and we've undergone haven't been without a little angst from everybody. That's just, I think, the nature of change, and I think we'd be wrong if we thought that we could do things without making people feel a little bit uncomfortable. But I think if we really take a look at what we've accomplished, you'd see that we're on the right track, and we're going to continue to change as society forces us to change. And I say it all the time to our officers when I talk to them at roll call or in service, is that we shouldn't be afraid to change, and if we stop changing, then the world's going to pass us by, and we're not going to be doing our jobs effectively. So I talked a little bit about the marathon from last year, and I just want you to know that this year coming up, we've also gone well into our planning stages up to this point. not only internally, but also with our external departments that we're going to be working with. You're going to see a lot of changes the day of the marathon. You'll see more officers on the street in uniform, not only from Brookline Police, but we'll have officers in there from Boston and Cambridge Police helping us. Cambridge has offered to send us their bomb disposal unit, which is several bomb dogs with trained technicians with them that will work exclusively in Brookline. They'll be teamed up with Brookline officers for the day. You'll see a good amount of changes along the route in that from the finish line probably all the way through Brighton, you'll see barricades on both sides of the route instead of the rope. So the runners will have a wider swath to run in, and the flow of the crossover pedestrians will be confined to certain locations that we'll identify ahead of time and direct people to. And there's going to be a lot of things that people aren't going to see. We're doing a lot more work in different command posts set up along the route. We'll have plainclothes officers in the crowds. We'll have more cameras set up along the roadway that will be monitored. And there's a lot more work. That's just in generalities that I'll speak about now. But just so you know, it's not something that we've sat on. We got involved in this planning almost right after the marathon last year, and one of the newspapers asked me how many meetings we've had so far this year, and I can't even really think about it, tell without really thinking about it, because we send our officers to meetings on almost a weekly basis in different parts of the marathon route, just so we stay on top of things. Also this September, as you know, we got accredited, which was a great step forward for the department. The easiest part about accreditation is that we were already, for the most part, the vast majority of that, 90-something%, I'd say, we were already doing. We just had to commit to it in writing, and that's what we did. But we did a lot of work in that area, and we all came to fruition in September. One of our big goals of last year was to utilize social media a lot. And we put a lot of that responsibility on one person, Lieutenant Phil Harrington, in our community service division, and he really took to it. Just some of the numbers that we found over the past year, where our blog, where he got up and running, we average over 10,000 hits per month at our blog, our crime blog, that people access, the media accesses, and we give information out. The webpage had over 70,000 visits last year. Facebook, the visits to Facebook increased 5 times over the past year, and Twitter is up to over 3,900 followers at this point. Beyond that, internally, he's opened it up to supervisors in our department that they can tweet out stuff that happens as it's happening and inform the public of road closures or bad accidents. And he's also reinstated the neighborhood community list that we have, different sections of the town that they've asked us to put listservs together, and if crime happens or something happens that they should be aware of, on a 24-hour basis, it's our commanding officers and our people in the community service division can give that alert out to them to get to the people on their listserv. So we've stepped it up. Today we had a meeting on updating our webpage all over again, so we're going to continue to keep moving in that direction and try to get as much information out to social media as we can. As you know, we give a lot of community classes as well. We do the high school police academy, we do child safety seat checkpoints, but we've also done a RAD class, and I know that members of the board had asked me about RAD and asked me about are we going to continue it and are we going to reach out to a lot of people.
This is the rape prevention class, right?
Yes.
For people who might not know what.
Yes, thank you.
is. Yeah.
Well, in December, we graduated a class, and right after the graduation, within a week or so, we got a call from one of the graduates, a woman, and she provided us with a Boston police report. As part of that police report, she was in a section, I don't even know where, but she was assaulted, she was grabbed from behind, and the man tried to take her pocketbook. She said that she fell right back to her training that she had been given in our RAD program, and she started yelling, she started kicking, and she started punching, and With her yells, a member of the public came by to assist her. The guy decided better of it and let her go, let her pocketbook go, and took off running. So she attributed it directly to her instructors and to the fact that she gained a lot of confidence by going through that RAD class, which was really good. And, you know, our officers that train in the RAD, they get beaten up. They have red suits, but these people, we ask them to get their frustrations out and learn that it's not altogether too bad to defend yourself. And the officers do take a beating. But we just put it out to see if any more officers in the department want to volunteer to be members of that RAD class, and we did get several officers that do want to participate and help members of the community out. So it's great. During the year, we gave out 35, we recognized 54 officers based on 35 examples of excellent police work that they did throughout the year, and they received commendations from us. I just want you to know, it hasn't stopped. Crime still does go on, and we right now are in the midst of a lot of bank robberies. A lot, because if you read in the news that there's a lot of robberies going on in area communities. Well, we're not immune. Since the beginning of December, we've had 7 robberies of area banks, of Brookline banks. From video footage and description, we think we're faced with at least 4 different people that did those 7 robberies, perhaps 5. Today, there was at least 2 bank robberies in the city of Boston. But we have taken steps, increased patrols. We've had a lot of interaction with the banks. We are working with a bank task force in Brookline and outside of Brookline. So there's a lot of response from the area to try to get these people. But like I said, we're looking at 4, maybe 5 people for 7 different robberies since the beginning of December on us. Also, the other night, I want to mention the robbery that we had, attempted robbery that we had down on Amory Street the night of the Super Bowl. It was a Sunday night at 10, around a little after 10 o'clock. A young lady was walking home on Amory Street by herself. She was approached from behind by a male. He was described as 5'8", perhaps wearing a mask. He grabbed her, tried to take her pocketbook. She did scream. She got the attention of a couple that were in Nivet Park walking their dog. They came and tried to assist her. The subject that was trying to do the robbery took off running. Up Thatcher Street, there was a car, a Honda Pilot, that was waiting, parked on the side of the road. They got in the car and took off up Thatcher Street. The male of that couple that was walking, he said he tried to go get the plate number, was unable to see it. As it fled up towards Pleasant Street, it turned left on Pleasant, then onto Crown and Shield Road. That case is being actively investigated by us and the assistance of BU. We have some video evidence. We're working to get more of it, and we are in the area, like I said earlier today, and just as evidence from what I had said earlier about an active citizenry, tonight about 6 o'clock, we get a call from somebody on St. Paul Street that they saw something that was suspicious to them, to 2 individuals that had said something, and then she saw them standing in the doorway for a couple of minutes and then walk away. That call was given out, and our people were there right away because we're down there both in marked and unmarked vehicles. So if they come back, we hope we're going to be successful in stopping the robbery before it happens and then taking into custody the people that are responsible for it. So that's a short way of introducing you to the crime report from last year. So I've done this, as you know, for several years now, and please feel free to stop and ask questions as we go through it, because you all have received a book over the weekend that outlines everything we're going to talk about tonight. And once we get through this, we'll be putting that book and its contents up online on our website that people can take a look at and see what it is that we're talking about. So, during this past year, we had 879 Part A crimes. Now, Part A crimes are the major crimes that are reported to us: murder, rape, robbery, burglaries, larcenies, assaults, and auto theft. As I said earlier, it represents a 12% decline from last year. 5 of the 7 categories remained unchanged or went down, and we saw a little bit of a spike in auto thefts by 2 and rapes by 3. And during the year, we had a 44% clearance rate. That rate will change as we go forward and we investigate crimes and solve crimes that were taking place in 2013. This is a chart that shows the work that's been done by members of the department in the last 20 years. And you see a decline from a high of 2,249 Part A crimes in '94 to 879 this past year, which is, I think, it's a 61% decline in crime, which is great. And our aim is to go even further in 2014, down. This is just a synopsis. Fortunately, there's no murders. Robberies are down, assaults are down, burglaries are down, larcenies are down, and there's the other 2 categories that are up a little bit. It's just a chart showing the comparison of last year to this year. No murders in 2013. We've been on a pretty good run with fortunately, with not having any homicides since 2006.
Really? Wow.
Rapes were up a little bit. All 6 rapes that have been reported to the police have been cleared, either 5 by arrest, 1 by court action. In 5 of the 6 cases, the parties knew each other, and it tells a little bit about each one of those there. Only 1 victim did not know her offender, and that was a cab driver who took a party home, and the party invited the cab driver in and he sexually assaulted her inside her apartment. But he was arrested subsequent to that.
She invited him in?
Yes. This is just a 10-year average on our rape cases. Our robberies were down, and I do have to make a comment. Back when we began this year, we had a series of robberies in North Brookline. We had a lot of media coverage on those robberies. The work of our officers, both the legwork that they did and the crime scene protection that they did, and the follow-ups that were done with area departments, we made a series of 3 groups of arrests, and those robberies stopped. And I can never remember a time where we went 4.5 to 5 months without getting a robbery in this town. And after we made those arrests and the subsequent, I think, very positive media outreach that we had in news stories that we got, we didn't get a robbery again until sometime at the end of June, beginning of July. So that was a long stretch. Unfortunately, we're not in that stretch right now, but that's a low amount of robberies for us on any given year. We tell a little bit about each one of the...
So this includes some of those bank robberies at the end?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Our assaults also were down this past year, down by 26%. 93% of those were cleared. A lot of times the assaults, people know each other, or it's a domestic, and as you know, we have a mandatory arrest policy on domestic violence. We had 30 cases of that, 131 that were domestic violence related. 7 of those assaults were assaults on police officers. 8 of the assaults took place inside one of our 2 hospitals, mental health hospitals in town, whether it's Bournewood or HRI down Babcock Street. And then we had 15 indecent assaults or sexual assaults that took place. Burglaries, which is break-ins into homes and our commercial buildings. Again, we were down 23% from 2012. 33% of those were cleared, and there's the breakdown. 16 were in arrest, 11 were people summoned into court. There's a lot of cases that remain active, but we do a crime scene on each one of those, and we try to get some fingerprint evidence or DNA evidence. And fingerprint evidence, usually we can turn around pretty quickly. DNA takes 9 months at minimum unless you have a serious crime that your DA will ask for a push on it. Otherwise, if we were to discover blood at the scene of a break-in, when the person cuts himself climbing through a window, we wouldn't get results of that back from probably 9 months at best,
Wow,
just based on the backlog.
that's not how it is on TV.
No,
So
unfortunately.
what would it cost to have equipment that you could do that yourself?
I think it's an awful lot of money. The state is working on trying to get rid of the backlog, but it's not, it's not where it was 2 years ago, but it's still a backlog. It's still a long time to wait to use evidence that you recovered to try to solve a crime. I wish it was a lot quicker.
Chief, what does cleared through referral mean?
If we were to take if it, say it was a family member that came back and broke into the house, and we get down and they don't want them in the house, we'll take them out of there, but it's clearly a mental health issue,
I see.
we would decline to prosecute and maybe involve Brookline Mental Health or the court
So
psychiatrist.
referral to mental health, I
Yeah.
didn't understand. Thank you.
Our larcenies are down. Just one thing to talk a little bit about a bait bike. We were using GPS this year to try to reduce some of our bike thefts. And one of our lieutenants, Lieutenant Derek Hayes, came up with the idea of using a bait bike. He went out and researched where we could go get a piece of a GPS unit, how it would work, and we started running with that this spring. We would get a bike out of our recovery hall, put a GPS on the bike. Through crime analysis, we'd find out where our bikes are getting stolen from, or where's a likely place for them to get stolen from. We would put the bait bike in that area, and then our officers would be made aware of what bike is out, what it looks like. And if that bike was taken and moved beyond a certain circumference, we would get officers in the dispatch center notified by a company that the bike was on the move. This past year, that bike was stolen 6 times. Once we were able to recover it, it was dumped over by the Shaw's Market on Commonwealth Ave, and we didn't catch anybody with it. But the 5 other times that it was taken, we made arrests totaling 9 people that were involved in taking that bike on those 5 other occasions. Several of those groups that we caught were people that were in here specifically to steal bikes and get on the bikes and take them and make a quick sale. So even though we did see an increase in bike theft this past year, had it not been for the arrest made, we would have seen a lot more, I think. We had a group of kids a couple of times in here at night when they were just going down, looking down driveways. They find an open garage, they're in the garage, they go out there taking bikes. And these kids are, you know, they know what they're going for. If they find a bike that's more expensive than the one they're driving, they'll drop the one that they're on and take the more expensive one. So.
Is there, like, I know some people that might like to have that GPS thing on their bicycle. Is that technology coming for, like, a low jack for bicycles?
That's what this is, but it's I don't know if it's done commercially that would help somebody out that way, but I don't see why it wouldn't. I mean, there are a lot of departments, and we'll be looking to expand the use of GPS that can use it for a variety of crimes. We have used it, that same unit, when we thought that we were getting pocketbooks stolen. We could put it in a pocketbook and put the pocketbook on the back of a chair up at one of the coffee places where we're seeing pocketbook thefts. We could do it in a notebook or a briefcase in a car that we're experiencing car breaks, and put a big car out there, but have the GPS in one of that unit and follow them at that point. So there are a lot of, it opens a lot of possibilities that we'll be expanding upon.
Go ahead.
Are you finding with the bike thefts that they're clipping locks, or they're just taking unlocked bikes, or combination, or?
Combination, but a lot of the bikes that are stolen aren't locked. They would be removed from a porch. We had an arrest, an officer on detail down here in Aspinwall Ave made an arrest where a guy was scaling a porch on on Brook Street. He was getting up to the 2nd floor, and there was an expensive bike unlocked on that 2nd floor porch.
Wow.
And even though he didn't talk, the officer was under the clear impression that he was up there to get the bike. So,
Did you get a conviction on that one?
I'm not sure.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure. But he did spend some time with us. We did give him a place to sleep. That's just a breakdown of the larcenies. We did see another little increase in our mopeds getting stolen and scooters getting stolen. Motor vehicle thefts were only up by 2. It's still low from highs of previous years. And you see a decline from the past 15 years of car thefts. And these are our cases that are cleared. Like I said, it was 44% on December 31st, but we know the clearance rate will go up as we continue to work on some of those crimes.
How does the 44% compare with other cities and towns?
It's, compared to other cities and towns, I don't normally do that. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. It's been going up since we've been paying more attention to it in Brookline. I think when we started looking at this, we were in the 30s, and for the last couple of years, we've been up in the 40s for the clearances. We do require a lot more follow-up by supervisors in Detective Bureau, whether they're going to, who's going to look at the crimes, who's going to be the one that's getting back to the victims. And when we see arrests made on the scene by the officers that are responding, a lot of times there's evidence on the subject from a couple of breaks or something that he or she may have done just before they get caught for the one they were doing, and that allows us to link crimes, which will increase the crime rate. So we are paying closer attention to that, and it is one of the SMART goals that our detective division has in order to improve its capability of solving crime. Our arrests are down a little bit, but that stands to reason with the crime rate being down. We had 888 arrests this past year. Our FIs are down a little bit. There's the field interrogations. This next stat, about 25,000 moving violations were issued. We've always looked at moving violations as being a real good crime prevention tool. I think it shows that we have an active police department. I think if somebody comes into Brookline, I was driving around Brookline and sees our cruisers out there with the lights going, the officers doing their job, I think they may think twice about doing something. And we try to insist our officers do a lot of moving violations, and they do. They do comply with 25,000. There's a lot. This past year, we ended up being the focal point of a Channel 4 spotlight team, not an investigation, but a spotlight on the number of moving violations done per capita in Brookline was the highest in the state. So,
I remember that. I don't think they viewed it as a compliment to you, but,
we did. We tried to stay.
okay.
You skipped over the last point
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the
can we go back to
parking.
the parking?
128,000 parking violations were issued, which is down a little bit, but
Is that because people are complying?
yes, that's what we've seen an increase in parking meter compliance based on that. And then there's the permitting process that the transportation does too, give it out permits for cars to park. And we see a lot of cars moving off all-night parking into the lots and pay the $10 fee to park in the lots instead of a $30 ticket out on the street.
Have we seen our parking revenue going up
Yes,
on the other side?
yeah, especially in relation to that overnight parking. It's the multi-space meters, although they've had some problems on street in the lots, they've been very effective for people who don't have to come to the station anymore, can do it right at the site.
Well, my slide just went kind of hoopy on me here.
Can't help you there, Chief.
All right. We had 22 use of force incidents during that year, Use of force, we have defined as anything beyond compliant handcuffing. So many times during an arrest, somebody's not going to want to put handcuffs on them, and the officers are forced to put their hands on them and restrain them. And they have to do a report when they do that. They notify the supervisor, and we check to make sure that everything has been complied with. There were 22 use of force incidents that were looked into by supervisors during the year. We had 6 motor vehicle pursuits. Our motor vehicle pursuits, each time that it takes place, it's has to be investigated by the on-duty supervisor to make sure that the policy has been followed, and then it gets followed up by our Officer of Professional Responsibility. On those 6 motor vehicle pursuits, we ended up taking into custody 5 of those 6 people that were involved in fleeing from the police. They were either taken into custody that night or on follow-up based on evidence that was recovered from the vehicle that was left behind. Over the past several years, you know, we've had a lot of work we've been doing on loud parties. We've been looking to reduce them as much as we can. And there's a 3-year chart showing the flow of loud parties, and the complaints that we received at the police department is on a downward trend. 3 years, we've reduced loud party calls by 34%. A lot of that reduction taking place in North Brookline. The noise complaints are down 20%. And in response to that, our bylaw citations are down as well. But in order to do that, we've done a lot of outreach to families when they move in here. In September, we commit several officers to the areas where students, the student population is up. Our officers go out and meet the parents, tell them about the town bylaw, give them a thing we call the blue view. That's a breakdown of not only what the police expect, but what DPW expects, and the fire department, and the town itself, about being a good neighbor. And we talk to the parents. Hopefully they'll talk to their student children, and well, someone's listening, because we're down 34%. I'll stop there. That was on the crime, and then we can go into the race and gender.
Okay, questions? I did have 2 questions. Somebody told me, first of all, I want to say that people very much like getting their neighborhood report on what's up in their neighborhood, so that's been very popular. People are mentioning it to me as something they like to know about. But, so you mentioned the one Amory Street
Yes.
incident. Somebody said to me that there had been maybe several things in that neighborhood, women being attacked. Was it only that one?
That's been the only robbery that, Casey, could you help me out? But I know of no other robbery down there but that one, and that just happened. So,
Okay. There was something else I heard about, but I can't remember now, so. Will you move on?
okay. We, as you know, we cover these 4 areas as part of our race and gender report, and we've been doing this for the most part since 1997. We have a breakdown of the persons that we arrest, a racial breakdown. 39% of our arrests are white, 35% black, 19% Hispanic, 3% Asian, the Pacific Island, and 4% Middle Eastern. 81% of our arrestees are male, and 19% are female. We arrested 39 juveniles during the past year.
I actually have a question about those statistics.
Yep.
Now, when you look at the demographics in Brookline, and I know you've done a lot of work on, so that we're not racial profiling people as they drive through and so forth, but the black arrest record is way high given the population in town. And in fact, we have more Hispanics that live in town than people who identify as black, and we have far more Asians in town than people who identify as black. So I'm wondering why that black statistic is up so high, and is there any correlation between greater area demographics or something? I mean, why is that number up so high?
We've done, like you said, we've done a lot of work, not only internally, but also with some of the area colleges that study racial profiling and study bias-based policing, and we've done a lot of training on our officers, and really, if any community was to go by their census, especially, well, we'll stick to Brookline. If we were to go by our census, we would never hit the marks of the census for anything that we do, because it doesn't take into account the people that work in town, visit town, drive through town, and that's just, and nobody captures that information unless you're going to stand out on the sidewalk and take numbers, more or less. So I think I like to compare our numbers by the year and compare it to ourselves. I think if we take a look, if we really wanted to get probably a better picture, is that we would have to expand beyond our boundaries and see what the population breakdowns are in Boston. We're surrounded three sides by the city of Boston. We take a look at who we arrest, and then we end up going at their home addresses, their city or town, hometown. We'll see how many Brookline residents we arrest versus others. So without getting into that much detail, a lot of times we look at where we stand year to year. And these numbers are not far off from where we've been all the way through. And it probably goes back a lot more years than we've been accounting. We'll get to our motor vehicle stops. And our motor vehicle stops, what we compare to is what Northeastern provided us in 2008 of our driving population. They put students out on different locations at different areas through town, and they had to mark down who they thought were driving the cars. And they took a race and sex breakdown of the operators in those motor vehicles, and then they did the percentages of that, and they gave that to us, and they said, this is your driving population. And our numbers almost closely mirror the numbers that Northeastern said we had going through here. Now, I happen to think that's old, because that's 6 years ago now, so we hope to be able to do a more recent study and update those numbers, but we're going to fall right in line with those numbers when you see our motor vehicle stops. So I wouldn't put much stock in comparing us to our census, because it does not take into account the type of community that Brookline is.
Okay, well, I just ask you to sort of think about that, and if at any time we can sort of figure out some way to look at this and make sure that it's appropriate, what those numbers come out to be.
And this is the breakdown over the past 3 years. These are our field interviews, which is a stop of suspicious persons on the street, and a breakdown of that. And here's our field interviews broken down by race and by sex. And here's our moving violations. This past year, I just going to put a chart up there. This shows the 3 years of our stops in those same categories. So I'll let the chart kind of speak for itself. It's the 3 years. Those numbers are extremely close to what Northeastern said was our driving population. And those numbers have been pretty consistent. Our citizen complaints. Now, we talked about the work that our officers have done. You know that we operate 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You know we come into interactions with a lot of people, whether they're in a good mood or they're not in a good mood, and we deal with it. We've got a pretty well-publicized citizen complaint policy. It's currently being reviewed by two attorneys in town, Doug Lewison and Ruth Ellen Fitch. They're going to come out with a report soon on how they thought that we were handling citizen complaints in comparison to our policy over a 3-year period. And this year we got 14 formal citizen complaints out of all the interactions that we've had, which I think speaks very well for our department and our members. There's a breakdown on the complainants, breakdown on the officers that were complained about, and the type of complaints that were given. Of those 14 complaints, one was appealed, and as you know, you entertained the appeal, but the appellant did not show up that night to represent their case. Any questions on that?
No, I do notice that the number of citizen complaints doesn't seem that high, but it is quite a bit higher than the year before. Is that is that partly maybe because more people are getting familiar with the
No.
process and that's the avenue for them to make their complaints?
No,
Or-
I think the year before was kind of an aberration, because we're usually up around this number, maybe a little bit higher.
Oh, I see.
5 was very, very unusual.
Super polite year. And a couple of the complaints, I believe, were sort of internal, were they?
Yes,
So you use the same process?
we use the same process when it's involving, if it's not a complaint that's driven strictly through internal Office of Professional Responsibility, no, we wouldn't. But a lot of times, we would include those statistics in with this, yes,
Okay.
because it's an investigation that's done.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question back on the race, and it's about the methodology. You know, increasing in our community and our society, people aren't just of one race. There's mixed parentage is, from my understanding, is a much greater part of our demographics than it used to be. How do you treat people of mixed parentage when you do these numbers?
If we go through the numbers and say it's a motor vehicle stop, absent an arrest and taking somebody into custody, we don't ask our officers to ask the person what their race is. There's a lot of debate on that over the racial profiling on motor vehicle stops. Why can't we get a person's demographic information on the driver's license? Why can't they scan it, and now we show what race they declare? And the train of thought at the time is it's not the actual race of the person, it's what the officer thought that person's race was. So we've been told, and we train our officers not to ask the people that they stop on motor vehicle stops what their race is, it's what you perceive them as. And that's what you write down.
I'm interested more in the arrests, actually, because that's where we're seeing a big difference in the number of black people identified as black people are arrested over the last 3 years. Is there a difference in the methodology over that time?
They're actually asked what their race is, and we mark their race down based on what they say. They self-identify at booking.
Mhm.
So that's different from the car stops. We won't ask them at car stops.
And has that changed in the last 3 years?
No.
Is there any difference in the way we
No,
keep these records?
nope, same way.
Thank you.
This is on the camera system, the reports. You have a more comprehensive report than my PowerPoint here. We had a meeting with the camera committee last week. We went over the whole report, and camera committee looked at it. It was a public meeting, it was posted, there were members of the public at that meeting, and there was an open question section that the public was allowed to ask questions based on the report. As you know, we cover these areas, incidents that were reviewed when the system was on from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., incidents that were not captured by the cameras during the off hours and the cameras are shut down, and then we're allowed to do overrides of the system based on the policy. As you know, because you all were notified about a month ago that the cameras are on based on those bank robberies, and we have been able to gather some evidence from our cameras on more than one of those robberies. This is a breakdown over the past several years since the policy's been in effect, from the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. of those three categories of crime. When the incidents that, when the cameras are on, that we used, when we had to activate the cameras sometime after we were notified that the incident took place, and then when we had the cameras off and we could not use images that may have been on the film. And that's kind of like the biggest category. These are a breakdown of the types of incidents that we've reviewed and searched through our camera system on. These are the ones that we've overridden, where something takes place, dispatch is notified, and the dispatchers have the ability to turn the camera system on. Unfortunately, there's a built-in delay that we've gone over on several occasions, that it takes a person to realize that something occurs, to call the police, dispatcher pick it up, dispatcher gives the information out, then goes to turn the cameras on. So there's just a natural delay that develops by having the camera off.
Does the dispatcher have the ability, without going through bureaucracy, to turn the?
Yes. Yes.
So if they get notified of an incident that meets the criteria, they can just flip the switch?
They can turn it on, or when the call's given out, either the officer or the sergeant on the street will get on the radio and say, turn the cameras on. That's normally how it happens on the overrides. Some of the evidence that we've gotten, like I said, on the bank robberies that have taken place, we never would have gotten without the system being on. We'll see where that takes us. But that's actually has helped us, and it's going to help us when these people are eventually caught. We haven't had any reports of misuse of the system, and no violations on the retention of the footage. So that brings us to the end of the slide, and in your packets there, you have reports from other areas of our department that we're doing, that are underway. Our bicycle unit has done a considerable report on all of the efforts of our officers on enforcing and educating the people on bicycles and trying to clear the bike lanes of double parked cars. You have a report from our special response team that's been up and running now for almost 2 years, and will played a large role in the aftermath of the bombing last year, and will play a large role in how we handle things this year. You have a report there from our liquor officer, our lodging house officer, and I think a more formal report on our loud party and noise complaints. So,
Comments? Selectman Goldstein.
Thank you. One area of camera use that I don't see mention of is the system which I know has been approved and rolled out, the license plate reading equipment. Have we implemented that? Is it producing results, and should we expect that to be included in a report in the future?
I should have touched base on that. It has not been deployed yet for a variety of reasons. When I came in front of you and asked about getting this, one of the big things that we wanted to look at it to do was to eliminate some of the paperwork and the hand stuff that you do when you're issuing 2-hour parking tickets. We thought we had an agreement with a company that could provide that for us, and so we started making all sorts of plans with that company, and then they ended up pulling out of Massachusetts. It took us a little bit to find a company that does have that module and that can work to our satisfaction. We tested it out, we have it, we purchased it. It's mounted on a car. We have about a dozen officers trained in the use of the system, and we tested the system out the end of December, sometime in early January. The system works. It's going to be a 14-day retention on most of the information that's there, just the same thing as our camera policy, but it has not been rolled out. Our IT officer, who has been spearheading this, Scott Wilder, picked this time to go on vacation, so we don't want to roll it out, although it's ready to go until he's back in case there's some glitches, which there probably is going to be. So it looks to be rolled out once we get through this week with the snowstorms. It will be rolled out onto the streets within the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. And can we expect in next year's report, we'll have a section devoted to that equipment and the product from that equipment?
I think you'll get your first report in the mid-year,
Great.
in July, yes.
Thank you. I got another question, too. I want to make note of the fact that we've had the representatives of our patrolmen's union here for several weeks now. We're aware that there's contract arbitration pending. I appreciate the respectful way they've been sitting here and letting us know their position, but not producing any further disruption beyond that. I wonder if you might comment on morale generally among your staff, the hard-working men and women of the Brookline Police Department, and specifically whether our union negotiations right now are affecting that morale.
Morale is a thing that gets affected by a lot of different things, including the lack of a contract. So I would say that, yeah, that is affecting it. I'd say that there's a lot of other things that go into it as well. But one thing I will say, to a credit to the department, is that they don't stop working. I've said up here, if I said it once, I said it a dozen times, that I'm fortunate to be able to be a police chief of a department that has such people that are very smart, very hardworking, and do the right thing. And it's evidenced by the fact that even though we're without a contract, the officers are taking steps to drive the crime rate down. So I wish we had a contract, but we have a process that we're going through. We have a session scheduled for March 6th. I think March 6th will be a big day. I hope that we get a lot accomplished on that day during that session.
And I echo that hope. Thank you.
Neil?
A couple of things. First, I just want to talk a little about the marathon, and I understand there's a lot of preparations going on, and there's stuff you can talk about, stuff you can't. But one of the things that's just so special about the marathon is just the feel of it. And I hope that the preparations, the security preparations that you and the other departments are taking, preserve that. There's this balance, and I hope it's not going. The presence isn't going to feel so overwhelming. Can you talk to that a little bit?
That was a key, not only in Brookline at one of our earlier internal meetings that we had, but if you go, and we meet a lot with Boston State Police, that's a feeling that everybody has. The marathon is such a family event. It is such a great occasion. We've gone through 118 marathons, and that was the one horrible thing that happened. I think the most that happened leading up to that point was warm weather, that you had a lot of people collapsing, but that's a concern of ours. It is a balance. When we make our plans and when we talk our plans through, we have that in mind. It will not be an overbearing presence. Like I said, you will see people that you know walking through the crowds, but they'll be plainclothes. They're not going to be, you're not going to see a big display of armor and weaponry, but it will be there. Our goal is to let people come here and have the fun that they had on those 117 other marathons. And that's a concern that we have, and we're taking that into a high point of our consideration as we go forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Changing gears a little bit, you had touched upon Lieutenant Harrington's adoption of Twitter and Facebook, and I'll just, when I hear something is going on, I've actually taken to checking Twitter. I heard there was a fire, a 7-alarm fire, so I checked the Boston Fire Department Twitter feed, and there were the pictures. So I think that's becoming more and more of an information source. So I would encourage you to continue in those efforts. One thing, I had a conversation with Lieutenant Harrington on the street one day, and he said, since he started posting updates to Twitter, phone calls to the department asking what's going on have gone down. So I would encourage you to continue that. It's a good communication vehicle.
I think one of the other big things that we got from it, and Ignacio's sitting here and Brock's sitting here, but it's really helped on outreach to the media. Several years ago, you'd have to type up a press release and double check it and put it in the fax and fax it out, and where now you can get in for 144 characters or less and say, this is what's going on, and then the press will call you, and then, you're off and running. And there is a lot of value to it.
Yeah. And lastly, I noticed in our package is a 4 or 5 page list of incidents that were missed, that could have been seen in the cameras during the time that the cameras were off. What I'd find interesting as we go forward and think about, rethinking perhaps some of those policies would be, banding the incidents by, hours. So to see if there are trends, if there was some middle ground where if we turned it on for a few more hours somewhere in the continuum, that we would catch a higher percentage. So that's just something to think about.
We can do that. As a matter of fact, I think the first year, we did have that chart where we found where most of our calls were being missed. We'll take care of that.
Well, Chief, I want to say to you and all the members of the department who are here tonight, this is a very impressive report. And particularly, this year is great, but when you look at that 20-year trend going down, was it 63% or something?
61.
61.
But who's counting?
That is very, very impressive, and I don't think it's something that many cities and towns could say. And we are certainly aware and very grateful for all the hard work that goes into that. And, we know that sometimes you have to take the abuse of the public or work the bad shift in the middle of the night and so forth, and it's...
Or abuse from us.
I think we try to be reasonably polite. Anyway, so I just want to say thank you very much to all of you.
Thanks.
Anything else?
That's it.
Mr. Kleckner?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Casey.
Okay, we have some interviews now. Stephanie Leung? Okay, John Bain, I see him there. Well, I think we all know you pretty well, John, but since for the listening public who watches this, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is John Bain. I'm presently chairman of the Park and Recreation Commission. And I've been on for, I really don't know how many years now, in the late 80s. I'm proud to say I've never missed a meeting.
This is particularly impressive this year.
This year,
Squeeze the meetings
4
in.
days out of the hospital, I came in, and I have to admit that I don't remember. However, things are going well with me. It's a little bit of a recovery process, but I'm doing well.
Well, we're happy to hear
And,
that.
And I am hoping that the selectmen will reappoint me for another term. We have a lot on our plate on the Park and Recreation Commission. We're working on Fisher Hill, which is a little scary right now looking at it, but we hope to have a wonderful site there at the conclusion. We've completed Clark Park, which is working very well. The neighborhood seems to be very pleased with it, and it's being well used. Also, Billy Ward Park is nearing completion. We've had some setbacks
Yeah,
on
that one's kind of taken a long time. What's
It
up with
has.
that?
It's been unfortunate that the contractor has just dragged their feet on it, and Aaron is addressing it, I think, on the financial end of it. Probably some fines. And in the future, we have on our plate, we have Brookline Avenue. We have money to study the rehabilitation of the Brookline Avenue Park and Pierce. And, you know, I've probably worked on the parks at least twice, every park in the town. And we have some more to work on, and I want to see their completion.
Well, I want to take this opportunity to throw out to you an idea I have had for a while, that I think it would be great if we could have some kind of a bicycle path, sort of, some of our parks in South Brookline where there's not as much traffic, maybe, kind of connecting, maybe a couple of parks where you could ride, you know, a nice family thing where you could ride around and then connect over and go to another park and ride around it, or something like that.
Well, you could, Skyline and Lars Anderson is a good, you know, close connection, and maybe
Yeah.
even a piece of the golf course, possibly.
Right, that's why I was thinking of the golf course in Lars Anderson, something like that.
You know, that would be a good ride for families, and they're safe parks, and they're
Yeah.
well-kept. And in fact, I'm very proud of the park department, of what they do in our parks and how they maintain them, as a
So
citizen.
should I come to one of your meetings and tell you that, or have I given you the ball and you're going to run with it?
It's on the list, and
Okay,
I won't forget it.
okay. Selectman Goldstein.
Thank you. And thank you, John, for your years of dedicated service. The Override Study Committee have presented some interim thoughts to us recently of areas that the town might consider cost-cutting and revenue increasing. At least two of them come to mind that affect the Parks and Recreation Department. One would be the early education program at Sewell, and another would be, I had it in my mind a second ago, it would be the use of programming of sports activities in school gyms. I'm wondering if you guys have been consulted about these proposals? Have you started work evaluating them, and
Well,
any thoughts?
we have an ongoing, I mean, the Sewell Early Education Program is probably one of the best you'll find anywhere. And we've had some reports internally where they come to the commission meetings and show pretty much what Chief O'Leary just did of their progress and what they're accomplishing. We have not heard from that committee as far as, you know, coming to our meeting and talking about some, you know, possible cuts or increase in some of our activities. However, as you know, we are on a cost basis. We're trying to get into a certain percentage where everything is self-supporting, and we're getting real close to that. Lisa Paradis is doing a wonderful job on the recreation side of bringing in new ideas, and people are very excited, and they're willing to pay for these ideas. So I don't know if that answers your question completely, but
The other item was scheduling of sports activities in school gymnasiums and school facilities, or something there's been some problems with coordinating in the past, and I'm just wondering if that's on your radar screen.
well, certainly is now. I can be honest with you, I'm not, I can't speak to that because I'm not familiar with that right now, but I'll certainly make sure that I am, probably by tomorrow.
Good.
Can I just follow up on?
Sure.
One of the items in the Override Study Committee list was the Recreation Department taking over the extended days.
That's been discussed, but not at the commission level at this time. Right now, it's in-house with Lisa Paradis and her staff.
That to me is a little odd, because, you know, the extended days are not, the town doesn't run the extended days. They're independent nonprofits, parent-run nonprofits. So that would be advocating the town taking over a function that it doesn't currently have.
Well, any new idea is a good idea to at least think about. And I think that's probably where it is at this moment in the hands of the Recreation Department itself. The commission has not really get involved in that at this point, but I'm sure when it actually comes down for a good idea, we'll certainly be involved.
Sure.
I attended a commission meeting some time ago, and probably about a year ago, and I was very impressed with the way you guys handled competing interests. The meeting I was at had to do with Robinson Playground, the proposal for a skate park, and a lot of people were concerned given the location of the abutters. Can you just describe your process? I was very impressed by it.
Well, we did we had an open, more or less it's called an open skate day over there at Robinson, and it was well attended by both residents of the town and outside of as well, which they are welcome. It was very successful. We have been dealing with the skate park for many years, and I'll be truthfully honest and point blank, it's been a not in my backyard issue. We do have an opportunity at Dean where we have on our add-on a skate spot, which would be something that would just be a very small item that they would skate upon. We did have an opportunity down on Pearl Street with the wind management that they were going to help us get involved with a parcel there. That again was totally turned down by the neighborhood, and we respected the neighborhood. We understand that there are noise issues and there's open space issues that they need to preserve for themselves. But our process is that we don't turn down any idea, no matter what it is. Maybe a Ferris wheel on Brookline Avenue might be knocked off completely, but basically we try to entertain the public as much as we can and go through some sort of a process, at least hear what they have to say. And we've never turned anybody down on any idea.
Any other? Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate, again, if I may say publicly, when I was out of commission, I thank the Selectmen for their wonderful gift that was sent to me of flowers, and I'm just glad that I'm standing here and not...
We are very happy to have you back in action.
And I feel great. Thank
Good.
you.
Thanks. Okay, Jean Stammeris? Welcome.
Good evening.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been working on and why you want to keep doing it.
I'm Jean Stammeris. I am a mother of two. I have one in the high school and one in middle school. And I've been on the Park and Rec for 3 years now. And I have to say it's been a very fast 3 years. But it's been great. I've really enjoyed working with all the commissioners and the public. And I have to say, John Bain, he's a great chairperson, he's a great leader, and I don't think the meetings would be the same without him. So I'm glad that he's here as well. But I have been working on a few things recently. As he said, we did Clark Park. That was the very first one I got to work on. And it was nice because it was in my neighborhood. And to see the whole process from getting the design review committee to working with the neighbors and to the grand reopening and getting to speak at that. And then now I get to drive by every day to see people enjoying what you had an input in. So that's a nice thing. And so we've been working on Waldstein and Warren. Those two are going out to bid this month, if not already. So, I'd like to see those through, to see the process of those being renovated, and I think they're going to be a nice addition to the parks when they're done, and just to continue on working with the public and making our Parks and Rec a great place.
Great. Questions?
I got one other item for the radar screen, other item that I don't know if you guys are working on. I hope you're working on. I know Lisa Paradis is thinking about, and that is having a premier baseball field for Little League Baseball in town. I don't know if you have any ideas on the subject, or at least maybe you could update us on what the commission has so far discussed about that.
Well, we really haven't discussed a premier one yet within the commission. I think it may be something she's working on. We have the one for the high school that's going to be renovated at Warren. And there's a Little League field there, but it would be nice. I mean, Brookline Youth Baseball is huge in this town, and, we need to support, the masses of people, and it would be nice to have a nice field for them to come to and play.
Good. Before you get too far down the road on the Brookline Ave project, I'd like serious consideration being given
Okay.
to that.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes.
I must compliment you and the rest of the commission on Clark Park. It is magnificent, and I walk by it just about every day, and it's so much fun seeing all the kids there, and it's really a great job. But one of the things that was done at Clark Park, there are basketball courts in the back that are abutting some of the homes there, and we did something to make it quieter. So, can you talk to that? Speak to
They
that?
did actually put a new surface down that actually absorbs the noise, and the basketball hoops, the backboard, is less invasive when it gets hit. So, but that wasn't really a huge issue with the neighbors around. I think they had been used to it, and I think their biggest complaint was the foul language, that you hear on it. So, the noise level wasn't as bad, so.
Yeah, we've had issues with basketball courts in the past. There was one at Billy Ward Playground years ago where there was a warrant article filed. And I think too, say at Robinson, there's a basketball court, right near some homes. So that's perhaps, I know Robinson is on the CIP some years out, so there's perhaps some opportunities there. But I think Clark Park is a good example of how certain strategies can be undertaken, and it probably didn't cost that much more to have the parks where the parks are close in to abutters,
Right.
to have the abutters coexist with the
Yeah,
parks.
we have a couple basketball hoops at the park in my neighborhood, Schick Park, and I have in the past gotten complaints about that, people go at night and start shooting hoops and stuff, and the neighbors do complain. So I think wherever you can use this new surface and new backboard, it's probably a good idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my next door neighbor could have used that surface on my basketball hoop when I was growing up. I can tell you that.
Well, thank you so much, Jean.
Thank you for your
coming
time.
in. And probably in the next couple of weeks, we'll be making some appointments.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Economic Development Advisory Board, Tom Nally.
Good evening.
Welcome.
I'll say a few words about what I've been doing and
Sure.
what I hope to do
Yeah.
in the future.
I don't even have to tell you. Go ahead.
I've served on EDAB since it was established in 1995, and I've been involved in all aspects of the large number of projects we've been working on. But my particular area of a background that I bring to the committee is in design, planning, and in traffic issues as a registered architect and a planner. And I had extensive experience in large-scale projects and transportation issues, and so I can bring that to the table.
Most recently, I've represented EDAB on the design advisory team for the hotel on the Red Cab site, which I think is going to be a great addition to the streetscape, very respectful of the abutters and the neighbors, going through the third time, but the third time is a charm. We really, I think, got a good project on our way there. And I think it's a very important aspect of what EDAB is involved in, trying to make sure that whatever development takes place works well in the neighborhoods and is respectful of the needs of the abutters. I think this and other worthwhile projects that EDAB has been supporting will help to provide much-needed tax revenue for the town at a time of great need, which we're all working on. I followed the B-Space and the Override Committee's process very closely, attended the hearings, spoken at the hearings, and submitted written comments. My son is a sophomore at Brookline High School and an active user of the Clark Park basketball court, and a very polite and respectful user, I must say. And he's going to be on his way elsewhere by the time we really get to the crunch at the high school anyway. But I feel it's critical to maintain our excellent school system for the present and future generations. Serving on EDAB and supporting responsible, well-designed development to enhance tax revenue for the town is a small contribution that I can make toward that end. I look forward, with your approval, to continuing that work.
Okay. We got any questions for Mr. Nelly?
Sure.
Selectman Goldstein.
Well, thanks for mentioning the Red Cab site, and I'm also very excited to see that project coming to fruition at last. To me, I hope it's the first domino in a chain that brings some much-needed renovation and rehabilitation to that whole area of Boylston Street between Cypress and Washington Street. I've been thinking about it and sometimes harping about it for as long as I've been involved in town affairs. And it occurred to me, Tom, that I don't think I've ever tried to pick your brain on the subject.
Well, that
Any
entire
thoughts?
corridor has been a key area back when Dr. Sperber was first involved with the Development Committee. That and the Commonwealth Avenue corridor were the first two locations that the Board of Selectmen at that time decided needed some attention and were possibly good opportunities. We have talked about, and we'll talk further about, opportunities in the Boylston Street Route 9 corridor. It's my neighborhood, and I spend a lot of time going to various meetings and been involved more than once with the Red Cab site and the design advisory team. But I think we face a number of interesting issues on that street. First of all, some of the parcels are very small, and the Red Cab site is a larger parcel, and so it's good to be able to take advantage of it and get a good project out of it that will produce some good revenue. But you've got the small commercial area near Cypress Street, which needs a good shot in the arm. The parking is a difficulty there. There is unusual mix of stores and opportunities there. I think we need to try to reinforce that. And there may be in the future some opportunities for other sites along that street to do some further development. We're going to be looking at that. We've already thought about it a little bit, and we need to look at it more carefully in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Marilyn Newman. Oh, you're ahead of me. I probably don't have to even ask you the opening question. Tell us about yourself.
I'd be happy to. Thank you very much for considering appointing me for another term at EDAB. I'm almost the newest member of the EDAB board. This was my first term, and I've very much appreciated and enjoyed the chance to try to contribute my skills to the town in this way. This is a fantastic board. That's really a pleasure to be part of. The folks on it have amazing design and finance and development skills and transportation background, as Tom mentioned, and lots of experience in the town. I'm a longtime resident of the town, but this is my first involvement in working on a town board. And my day job is as an environmental lawyer, so I do work on environmental permitting for development projects. And I bring, therefore, I'm learning a tremendous amount from my colleagues on the board. And I know I will continue to learn a tremendous amount if I get to continue to help. But I bring a slightly different perspective and skill set. I think I can contribute some knowledge of how one gets agreements down in writing so that they really reflect what people intend to do. And I've worked on zoning language. I've worked on structuring processes like the facade loan program. We did some work on that as part of the emphasis on commercial vibrancy that we've been working on really most of the time that I've been on EDAB. So I'm hoping that I can continue to add something that's a little bit different than what other people bring to the table. The issues that EDAB has as its focus are ones that I really care a lot about. One is the vitality, supporting the vitality of our commercial areas in town, which have so much to do with the character of what Brookline is. And the other is trying to encourage and realize beneficial development that respects the character of the town, but also provides revenue and provides additional vitality to underutilized areas. So during my short time on EDAB, as we've discussed, Davis Path Red Cab has come to fruition, which was amazing for me to see happen in 3 years. I mean, these things take a lot of patience, and my colleagues had worked on it for many, many years before that. But I came at the point when the sky plane zoning was crystallizing, and now the project is now going forward. I worked on the Cleveland Circle Cinema project behind the scenes. I worked on some of the zoning language. Other members of the board have been more visible in that project. I've represented EDAB on the Waldo Street Area Study Committee, which is still ongoing and is still an important challenge, I think, to really find some ways that that site can be a real benefit and a real complement to what else occurs in Coolidge Corners. So the study process has been going on for about a year. Also a very wonderful committee of professionals and local residents working on that. And that committee has commissioned a structural report to determine whether some of the Durgan garage can be reused, and has taken some ideas about reuse of the whole site and turn those over for evaluation to an economic consultant to see which of them may have economic feasibility. So there are a range of things that we still need to consider in that committee that would hopefully provide the basis for the town to think about the area proactively, to be able, if the occasion comes up, to respond to development proposals, but also maybe to think about proactively what development incentives and tools we could put in place there. And I would look forward to continuing to work on that. The board as a whole has had a major focus during the time I've been there on the whole commercial vibrancy issue, and the co-chairs of the board, along with help from some of the other board members and participation along the way, and the excellent economic development staff we have produced a report that I know you had a full briefing on earlier in the fall on commercial vibrancy. Brookline is very fortunate in that our commercial areas are very diverse, they are very vibrant. There are more local businesses, independent local businesses here than in most other similar small downtowns. There's more of a mix between retail and service and restaurant businesses. There's a lot to be proud of and try to maintain, but the retail trends nationally are kind of always against us, and there's a lot more work to be done to improve things further. So the commercial vibrancy report makes a number of recommendations that we're going to be continuing to be involved in implementing. But it's been very gratifying, really, to see progress in these areas in a pretty short time that I've been on the board compared to everybody else. So I always be happy to answer questions, and I really would just welcome the opportunity to continue to help the town on these issues.
Okay, great. Any questions?
I don't
I
have
think
any
you
questions.
covered
That was a
everything.
great presentation.
And so, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate it.
next is Bob Sperber, but I want to say to all of you who are here tonight interviewing, I often think how very blessed we are in Brookline to have so many dedicated and talented and, highly qualified people willing to serve on our many boards and commissions, and it's kind of how this town runs, with a lot of us contributing our time and energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I might throw that back and say that the town is very lucky to have volunteers who are willing to be select persons.
Well, thank you.
I've been in this town now, this will be my 50th year. I came here in 1964, so it's a big celebration year for me. I've been associated with economic development for 26 years. I made the recommendation to the board in 1988 that we have this capacity. We have wonderful leadership from Paul Sainer and Ann Myers. Tom and Marilyn represent the kind of quality on the board. It's a working board. Every time there's a specific project, people are matched in terms of their skill with the problem involved. And then Kara Bruton is absolutely superb. It's very unusual to find a person with both technical skills and human relations skills, and she has them both. And we're very fortunate to have her. I thought I would review the three so-called new projects for you, and then just summarize some of the impact of the old ones as well in terms of specific dollars, because I think that was my original motivation back in 1988, was to generate more dollars. We've talked about 111 Boylston Street. When that goes online in fiscal 16, that will produce $325,000 in new growth and over $200,000 in the room tax. 2 to 4 Brookline Place after fiscal 18 will produce about $1.5 million in new growth, and they will also make a one-time contribution of $750,000, at least that much, in public benefits to towards the Village Square project. And the Circle Cinema, that was an example of Kara's leadership. She convinced the developer and the architects to bring the project out to the curb line, which now gives Brookline, will give them potentially $275,000 in new growth and another $500,000 in room tax. Up till now, we had the traffic and the parking lot, and Boston got the money, but Kara's leadership will change that. And then on the old projects, the ones that have gone back to prior to the year 2000, the combination of Goddard House, Kendall Crescent, 1010 Com Avenue, and the Marriott Hotel will currently are yielding almost $1.4 million. And 10 Brookline Place was another example. Paul Sainer and Kara convinced the New England Art Institute, of which I'm now a trustee, to stay there, and as a result, they added on about another $90,000 in 90,000 square feet, and so we're getting about 15% of the taxes on that project, or another $250,000, and then the Marriott room tax raises another $575,000. So that totals up on a current basis to $2.2 million, which covers the salary of 44 employees who are earning about $50,000 a year. When the remaining 3 new projects go online by fiscal 18, that will add another $2.8 million, which will cover another 56 employees. So all told, by that time, we will be covering, our activity will be covering the salary of about 100 employees. So I think it's a good record. It's not, it doesn't solve all the problems, but in a time when we're competing for every single dollar, everything helps. So I've been very proud to be associated with this enterprise.
Selectman Goldstein.
Thank you. Well, when Dr. Sperber, when you came to Brookline in 1964, that was also coincidentally my first year of kindergarten at the Baker's School, and you were the superintendent of those, as you know, throughout my childhood. You were the superintendent of schools, and I think it uniquely qualifies you to answer this softball question that I'm going to throw at you, and
Okay.
that is, can you talk a little bit about the relationship between economic development in the town and the health of our school system?
Well, I care for the employees, all the employees of the town of Brookline, but obviously, given why I came here in the first place, teachers are particularly close to my heart. And so in the late 80s, after I left in 82 to go over to BU, I was thinking about what I could do to make a contribution towards helping the health of the school system, and this is the concept that I came up with, that we had to reverse what we had been doing in the 60s and 70s in this community, which was to down zone, and we had to generate more income because the health of the school system depends on as many dollars as the citizens will provide for it. There's a direct correlation between the economic health of the community and the quality of the schools. You affect the schools in a downward way, you will reduce the economic vitality. If you go up, the economic vitality of the community will go up.
Thank you.
I have a question. My question is, I would say in the last maybe even 10 years, that you guys have certainly been working against a bit of a headwind in terms of people saying, no, my neighborhood's too dense, I don't want anything here. And I'm wondering if you're considering, as we're entering into discussions about perhaps quite a substantial override later this year, because of all the expansion we've seen among the school-age population. If this is a time for EDAB to think of sort of taking it on the road PR campaign in connection with those override discussions, about maybe it's time for people to get a little more behind the idea of we need some economic development in order to keep that override from being larger than people can bear.
I think it's an excellent idea. We would be very happy to do that, but we have to do it in the context of whatever group of citizens are organized for the override itself. They have to feel comfortable about having us as part of the roadshow. But I, for one, would be extremely happy to play a part in that.
Well, I think there's going to be an opportunity, perhaps, as the Brookline Place project is going to need some adjustments to our zoning. So there's going to be some advocacy opportunities that I think are going to be helpful and necessary. But I just, changing directions, I just want to state, I've worked with you and the other members of the EDAB in my prior life, my life prior to the board, in a number of projects on the advisory committee, and my interactions with all the EDAB members I've worked with to a person have been phenomenal. And I think you guys are doing a great job and a necessary function, and we're privileged to have you doing it for us.
Well, thank you very much. One of the most unusual, I can't speak about any of the other boards and commissions in town because I don't attend their meetings, but I can tell you that in the 26 years that we've been either a development committee or the EDAB group that was formed in 1995, that there has never been a time when there's been any contention on the committee. Every single time we've had an issue, we talk it through and we arrive at a consensus. And it's just an amazing thing. I don't think we've ever had to formally take a vote, except perhaps to record the position of the board when we're asked by the Board of Selectmen to take a position on a particular article. But everything is by consensus. And you've heard from both Marilyn and Tom tonight. They are representative of the kind of quality that we have on this board. It's just been a delight for me to serve with them.
Great. Any other questions?
No questions.
Well, thank you so much for coming in, Bob.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one more item, appointments to the Climate Action Committee. So I will turn it over to Mr. Kleckner.
Yes, and I seem to have misplaced my, oh no, I have it here, thank you. Yes, we have just the one committee, and we have one vacancy and an applicant, Jessica Bergman, so I'd ask the board to...
I'll just note
Yes.
that there's going to be a substitution or two. Some of the groups, like I think it's Mary Dewar, Green Space, at some point.
So there are some members by virtue of their committee.
Right.
So, but at this current time, we do have the vacancy and of the citizen member, and we have an applicant, Jessica Bergman, so I'd call on the board to express their support for Jessica Bergman.
Aye.
It's unanimous?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's the conclusion of our meeting.
Be safe out there. Shovel with the legs, not with the back.
Oh, yeah, we